We are the town, AM 1530, FM 102.3, WCTR, and it is Talk of the Towns. I am Keith Thompson, and of course our regularly scheduled guest, Andy Maroney, Chief of Staff for Delegate Smigiel, and Queen Anne's County political observer, as we like to call her. She's here, but she brought a special guest, and a special guest bearing gifts, Delegate Mike Smigiel, joining us as well. And the gift that he's bearing is a copy of something that everybody should have, and it's a copy of the Constitution of the United States. And I actually have a couple of these at home, but I will keep this one. This will be the station copy, so I will keep this in my computer case, and so I always have a chance to have this as a reference. And everybody should have one of these.
Absolutely, absolutely. We got a couple thousand of them. We were handing them out at the Tea Party rally down in Annapolis, and we made sure, I got in a couple hours early, and we put one on every legislator's desk, so when they showed up, there was a nice copy of the Constitution, and it was compliments of the Maryland House of Delegates Tea Party caucus. You're not allowed to do that, but we had our apology in case we were yelled at already for being so bold as to hand out the Constitution in the Maryland legislature.
Of course, the interesting thing is that even having a copy of the Constitution, it doesn't end the debates, because so much of what's in the document is written kind of vague, and it's written kind of vague in a lot of senses, simply because the Constitution itself, the document itself, is a big, gigantic compromise. A lot of different thinking minds went into writing it, and I'm sure that not everything that all of the founding fathers, there's not a founding father that's 100% was in favor of everything that was in the document, but it's a wonderful document simply because it reflected a lot of great minds coming together and being able to forge a document to move ahead.
It gives new meaning to the word, the Great Compromise.
It does.
And I would agree with there was a lot of compromise, but I would disagree with that it's vague. I think it's very specific. Those compromises were settled, and when you say it's vague, it kind of gives a little bit of credence to the idea that it might be a living document you can reinterpret.
The language,
which I disagree with.
The language that's in it at times are things that sometimes it's clear on the surface, but you can read things in a couple of different ways sometimes.
I think that's people trying to read it different ways because they want to change what the Constitution was meant to what they would like it to mean today.
Yeah, because quite frankly, I can read the Constitution, and if I read it in a very specific sort of manner, there's a lot of things that go on that I think that really pushes the boundaries of what goes
on. Yeah, but you also have to pay attention to all of it. In other words, it's the words, but it's also, and I hate to bring it all the way down to this, but you have to bring it down to the commas. I mean, these people knew their grammar, and they knew what they were saying, and they knew what every single comma and period and piece of punctuation would indicate. And it sounds very nitpicky, but
it is kind of nitpicky.
The difference between a pause and a finality are an entirely different thing. So,
I mean, just for an example, you read the Second Amendment: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And it's two separate segments, and it's the first segment explains why you have a right to bear arms, and then the second part says that you have a right to bear arms. And but you go back to well-regulated militia, it all ties in simply with the powers of government and having a militia. Originally, the Constitution itself was designed that we would not have a standing military, but that we would have a militia that would of citizens that would fight wars, and the context that you have in today's society, where you really no longer have militias, where you have a standing military, but you still have the Second Amendment there. And so
the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed is the only thing that is significant there.
Yeah,
that you shall not infringe upon that right, because as the founding fathers told us, it's an inalienable right, and it comes from God. So no legislature, no executive, and no judiciary can take that right. It doesn't come from government, and that's what's key there, is that right comes from God as an inalienable right, and no government can infringe upon it.
But it gives you the basis that ties in with the other part of the Constitution of why the amendment is there, and so it's really interesting to sit there and read the Constitution and read it and read it word for word, and as you say, Andy, read even the punctuation marks, because it means it does mean something, but it's still it's a
but
great.
It's also clear. I mean, it's also. What I guess my point is it's very clear with what it says.
Interesting. I didn't tell you about this, and you just went there on your own with the Second Amendment, but this weekend I spent getting certified as a National Rifle Association pistol safety and use instructor. So it's something that I always wanted to do, but it's just it's fresh in my mind.
And I'm very big on I'm very big on the Second Amendment. So it's one of the things that always kind of strikes me as a little odd about First Amendment advocates who are not Second Amendment advocates, and I think if you're a First Amendment advocate, you kind of have to be a Second Amendment advocate too.
Yes, or you don't have a First Amendment without the Second to protect all others. Yeah,
which kind of it perplexes me about the ACLU's stand on certain things. So it's but that's just kind of a. But I do appreciate the gift. It is nice. Everybody should have a copy of this.
Well, the nicest feeling I got in this legislative session is when somebody stood up and there was a fight about the 10th Amendment. They were talking about redistricting and whether or not Maryland's Constitution specifically set what the congressional redistricting boundaries would be, which are appreciation for and respect for political lines or geographic lines, and that is set for the legislative redistricting. So the question was brought up by another legislator that anything not given to the federal government is reserved to the states. 10th Amendment argument is raised, and I watched the Democratic legislator next to me go in, lift the desk, pull out the Constitution we gave him about a half hour before, open it up, and start reading the 10th Amendment. That was very satisfying to see that people would actually go to that and take a look and see whether or not the Constitution did say what the legislator on the floor was saying it said.
And speaking of redistricting, I still haven't seen the map yet. I don't even know that I want to see what the map looks like, because it probably is crazy.
Yeah, Rorschach test. All you need to do is look at the 3rd district in Maryland, and we'll have that up. We've written a piece and we put it together. It just haven't had time because I've been going to other events, but it'll be up today for this weekend. But the 3rd district, we're holding a contest, and nationally, we're asking anybody to come up with a more gerrymandered district than the 3rd district in Maryland. Absolutely, the governor outdid himself here because there is nothing that could be more gerrymandered than the 3rd district.
I think Andy's pulling a picture up for me.
Right.